So again, I've already introduced myself. Now this is going to be a dialogue. I'm going to start off with some questions that we think you guys would want to know the answers to, but it's going to get passed to you. All right? Best impression you can make is ask a question, they'll remember you. Am I doing decent on you guys with some of the classes you've taken? Am I right? Okay? But again, I just thank all of you guys for being here.
Thank you.
And taking it all. So this is just a big deal to me. So I just think it's going to be fun. We haven't had, in the business school, we haven't had really anyone come and speak in your guys' industry. So some of them don't even know what you guys do. So I'm going to introduce them, but I'm going to actually have them tell about themselves. So Jonathan Watkins, you guys probably have already looked up here. He is the president of City of Hope. All right, and I'm going to have him tell a story in a second. And then I've got Trevor Brand, Chief Operating Officer. Some of you are like, what's a Chief Operating Officer? That's the job you guys are aspiring to. I don't know if you want the presidency. He has the harder job. Okay? The one I know you're going to like, though, is Patrick Brown. You know, the Vice President of Business Development. That is my least favorite of the three. Yes, I just thought I'd talk. Okay? But what I want to just start off with is just tell them about yourself, tell them about your path and how you got to where you are. Because I think that's just going to be an inspiration for them.
No, sure. First off, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you. I can very vividly remember sitting in those exact same seats and hoping that someday I was sitting in this seat. So it's an honor and a privilege to be able to be here. So I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, and I tell this story often. I was introduced to healthcare administration as a junior in high school. A gentleman by the name of Dr. LaDon Jones. He was a PhD and he was the vice president of administration and operations within the Baptist Health System in Memphis. He came to my high school, and spoke during a career day. And you probably can remember how career days go in high school. Your teachers forced you to sit in the room, probably like some of you do today, and hear from people about their careers and their professions. We had a gentleman came that worked for the police department. We had someone that was in city government. We had a physician, which at the time I thought I wanted to be a doctor because I grew up very humbly beginnings. That's a code or a professional way of saying poor. And the aspiration was just to, frankly, live better than I was living and my family was living at the time. My parents were blue-collar workers and just pushed the importance of education on my brothers and I. So I'm a middle child. I got a middle child and I got an older brother and a younger brother. Math and econ right there combined. But Dr. Jones's presentation stuck out because he was very passionate about what he did. He was dressed very nicely. I mean, everything about what he was talking about really resonated with what I wanted to do. So I left the class and went to my guidance counselor and said, Ms. Jenkins, I want to be a hospital CEO. I want to be a hospital administrator like Dr. Jones. So she says, okay. And like your guidance counselor would do, they give you pamphlets about the career opportunity that you've expressed interest in. So I go on through my junior year, finish high school, do well academically, finish number 10 in my class. And as a part of the next matriculation, think about college, I still had those pamphlets on who had the healthcare administration programs. Fortunately, Tennessee State was an in-state school because we couldn't really afford out-of-state tuition. And they had a great program, or a solid program. So I go to TSU and major in healthcare administration. Like you, I'm going to classes, doing things like this and so forth. But as a part of our degree requirement, we had to do an internship. And the Tennessee Hospital Association had what they called the Agenda 21 program. It was a program that was geared and steered towards helping minorities get into the field of healthcare administration. So I interview with the program, do relatively well in Nashville. They say, hey, we want to advance you to the next level of the interview process. And you're from Memphis, so we'll send you back to Memphis to interview there. So I go to Memphis, interview with a few people. They say, well, your next session, you need to meet Dr. Jones to talk about what you want to do. So Jones is such a common name. I go in the room and I'm like, oh, It's Dr. Jones. It's the same guy that 6 years prior was the reason and the ignited the flame in me to even do this. So I'm practically starstruck, and rather than interview, in my mind, if I can kiss up to this guy and remind him that I'm only sitting here in front of him because of him, I'll get this job. So I get the job, I get the internship, and I shadow him throughout the course of the summer, going to different meetings, and I get the amazing experience. And as a part of the internship, they write an article in the company newsletter just on the summer intern gaining hands-on experience. In the article, they asked me, and these gentlemen can attest to this, what do I want to be when I finish up? What's the ultimate goal? I say I want to be the hospital president and CEO someday. My mother I take the article home to my mom, shows it to her. She cuts it out and frames it and says, here, you keep this. And when you attain your goal, you put it on your wall. So I keep it. It travels with me as I go to grad school and get jobs matriculating up through the field. And when I get my first CEO job in Florida, I was able to hang it on my wall. And if you visit my office today, it's highlighted and on my wall an article that was written, over 20 years ago. And at 36, I became a CEO in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Broward Health, Imperial Point Hospital. So that's kind of, and then I ended up getting recruited to come join what was Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and eventually led it through an acquisition with City of Hope. And now we're the largest single specialty health system, and we focus solely on cancer. And when I say single specialty, that means that all of our patients have one disease state in common, and that disease state is cancer. So that leads me to speak with you today. So again, thank you for having me.
That is a cool story. I could just see that article. It's like your mom. I could just see your mom like, I told you so.
Right. Yeah. She reminds me of that often.
Cool story.
And now we get to hear CEO Chuck.
Awesome. So good morning, everyone. Echo Jonathan's sentiments. Super excited to be here. Glad I get the opportunity to speak with you all. I'm also from Tennessee. Right outside of Nashville, Tennessee is where I originally grew up. I got introduced to healthcare. My mom was a licensed practical nurse. So my introduction to a hospital, we were out for school. Here in the South, if it starts to sprinkle snow, they shut down school for the whole week. So we were out of school for the entire week. My parents couldn't afford a babysitter at the time, so my mom packs me in the car, and I sit in the hospital for 8-hour days, 5 days that week. So I don't advise anyone to do that if you don't have anything else to do. But I didn't necessarily know that I wanted that to be my career path. I thought I was going to the NFL, and if you all can see how big I am, I did play college football, but if you can do this in your seat, you're probably not going to make it. My feet don't touch the floor. I see you right there. He can make it. I could not. But I followed that path, and knew about healthcare, of course, from my mom, but didn't necessarily know that I wanted that to be my career path. So went to college to play football, but unfortunately tore both of my ACLs. Not at the same time, but I did tear both of them, and decided I need to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. So after that, I enrolled I wasn't declared a major at that point, but decided to study healthcare administration, largely because at the time my youngest brother had been diagnosed with autism. So I would go to some of the visits with him, and one of the people I met at the hospital was Vanderbilt at the time. Was the CEO. He told me a lot of the things that he did in his career path, and again, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I really liked the suit that he wore, so I said I maybe want to follow that particular career path. So did that, and after I graduated from my undergraduate courses, I couldn't find a job in healthcare, candidly, so I started working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So if any of you are about to graduate, be ready for a lot of emails from Enterprise Rent-A-Car. They recruit very heavily. But I worked there for about a year and a half, and a young woman by the name of Angel Moore, she comes by to rent a car and says, hey, I'm CEO at Erlanger Health System, and at the time, or Erlanger Community Health Centers. At the time, I was telling her, hey, I want to go back to school and get my master's degree. I'd love to maybe talk to you about what I need to do to get into healthcare. So she invites me to her health centers over the next couple of weeks, and I left with a job. So that's how I initially got into healthcare. But the one story I'll tell you just about how I really got to this seat. I was going through grad school and still didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I Googled healthcare CEO, COO. And the article that I see is this guy that looks about 11 years old. I'm reading this article, he still looks 11 years old. The article that I read, the article that I read really talked about this guy that was the youngest healthcare COO in the country at the time. So I became intrigued. How do I do that? I'm not too far removed from college actually, but I read this article and I'm thinking to myself, I have to meet this guy. So of course it's Jonathan Watkins that pops up on this article. So there's a big conference that we go to every year that I decided to join for that year. And much like him, he's coming down this escalator. Don't fire me for telling this story. Coming down this escalator. And I've been taught my whole life, when you getting ready for a job, you got to be very clean cut, and you do. I don't want to say you shouldn't be presentable, but Jonathan's coming down this escalator. He's got this mohawk. Like, I didn't know healthcare executives could have a mohawk. So I'm thinking this is the coolest thing in the world. And he thinks I'm joking when I say this. When he's coming down this escalator, it's like the Red Sea just kind of parted. Everybody moved out of his way, and he jumps right up to the front of the line to register. And immediately I was like, I don't know what he does, but I want to be Jonathan when I grow up. And we of course exchanged information then, which I think is the power of putting yourself out there and meeting people. Much like his story, he met a Dr. Jones that helped him in his career, and in my case, it was a Jonathan Watkins that helped me in mine. So 6-7 years later, he hired me to be his chief operating officer. So that's my story of how I got here.
Okay, we gotta have an intermission. Give us a story with a mohawk. Am I right? Am I right? You guys not want to know why you had a mohawk?
He's gonna say it's not a mohawk. It is a mohawk.
So it was not a mohawk. It was called the South of France. And it was a haircut that Usher used to have. I see it right here. Yeah. Trevor calls it a mohawk. Mr. T had a mohawk. Okay? They probably don't know who Mr. T is. I just realized I'm dating myself. But yeah, so that's what it is.
Okay.
And I was living in California at the time. So I was chief operating officer in Kaiser. In California, you can dress. I'll tell you later about California. But, yeah, it was par for the course there.
So sorry, we had to get that story. Okay, Jonathan, you get to be the best for last, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Tough acts to follow up, but my name is Patrick Brown, and no, it's okay. Share the same sentiments as Trevor and Jonathan. We were really excited to be down here. Thank you guys for taking the time to come listen to us. Hopefully we don't bore you too much with kind of our stories, but my entry into healthcare is a little bit unorthodox. I like to say that I really kind of fell into healthcare. So when I graduated school, believe it or not, my whole life leading up to kind of graduation, I was intent on I was going to be a high school football coach and a special education teacher. Quite frankly, never really thought about anything other than that. So that's just what I assumed that I was going to do. Kind of like Trevor, I played football and baseball in college, and that was just the next logical step for me. And I did start going.
I'm sorry. How many football players in the room? Okay, great. This is perfect. Tell the story about the record you held in Illinois.
Okay, so so I actually.
Wait, the first position and then.
So sometimes people are surprised by this, but underneath this, Dad Bob was a quarterback and center fielder. But yeah, so I was a quarterback, and this was in college. I went to school in Wisconsin, and so it's funny if you read there's still kind of a record in the annals of the history of the school that I threw the most touchdown passes in history in one game, and so I threw 6 touchdown passes, but there's a mistake in that article because it was actually 7 touchdown passes, because what they didn't count is the interception that I threw that got returned. So we tell that story a lot, so when people, if they bring it up or talk about it, it's like I saw or read somewhere, or someone told me that you threw 6 touchdown passes. I remind people that it was actually 7 to get full credit for that record. But yeah, that was a true story. But yeah, so that my life was obviously centered around a lot of friends of mine had become teachers. you know, a lot of the mentors growing up, like I'm sure a lot of you have, you know, coaches can make a big impact in your life. So I thought naturally that's what I was going to do too. And so my first job out of college, I was actually a wide receivers coach at a small university right outside of Chicago. I'm originally from the Chicagoland area. And so if you don't know this yet, but college football coaches, they do put in a lot of hours, and at the level I was at, in the division I was at, it's not a ton of money that you're making. We actually kind of did the math on it and figured it out. It was you know, here was minimum wage, and this is what I was being paid at the time. So I did have aspirations of not living in my parents' basement for the rest of my life. So I did have to supplement that income with a second job, and so I became an account executive for a packaging and processing machinery company, which sounds insanely awesome, doesn't it? Just saying it, but it wasn't. And so, so that was kind of my first taste of what real life is like, and I didn't know the difference because, you know, again, I thought I was going to be a coach. You know, this is an actual business. We're selling to customers. I thought this is what it was like, and I don't know if you guys hear this sometimes, but you know, when people say, you know, trying to stay young and stay in college and have fun as long as possible before you get into the real world, I listened to that, and then it made sense. It was like, my gosh, this is what people have to do every day at this type of organization. And so, you know, so I quickly learned, I don't know if this is what I want to do with my life, and you know, there was, even at a young, impressionable age, the philosophy that this company had, I didn't think was, you know, suited my skill set or didn't make a whole lot of sense to me at the time. And so I was looking to change career paths for that second job still. I was still kind of thinking about, you know, being a teacher and a coach. And so there was an opportunity, you know, through a mentor coach of mine that was in an outside leadership group that this cancer hospital was looking to recruit kids to come in, and you know, the job at the time was that you get to talk to cancer patients, you get to talk to family members, you get to be a part of this hospital. And so, in hearing that and weighing the options, it's, do I want to talk about machinery that I know absolutely nothing about, to people that, you know, weren't always so friendly to me on the phone, or do I want to see about you know, helping out, you know, cancer patients, really kind of having an impact. And so it was really a roundabout way on how I fell into healthcare, you know, a little bit different than, you know, the Jonathan story and Trevor's story. But, you know, once I got into that and then got exposed to everything that we actually do, you know, for not only patients, but their families, and then just feeling that real sense of pride of, you know, maybe this is something that I could do for the rest of my life, and telling people that, you know, I work at a cancer hospital, and you know, we legit participate in potentially saving people's lives on a regular basis. To me at that time, I thought that was a pretty cool story to be able to tell people. And to me, again, on that chance opportunity, I've been with the company now this summer, I think will be 18 years. So that quickly diverted my plans, never thought about coaching or teaching again. I've stuck with that ever since. So that's kind of how I fell into healthcare.
That is a perfect lead-in, though, to the next direction that we want to go. Because many of them don't really know what City Hope is. They've got a flyer and read it. And when you talk about, one of the things that you brought up was you only focus on cancer.
Right.
And that thing. So discuss really what is City Hope, the mission, and then really what that difference is of having just that one target focus versus, you know, each one of you guys have had kind of that broad background too in company.
Yeah, no, very fair question. So City of Hope is a national cancer care network of hospitals and clinics based in Southern California. We're headquartered in what's called Duarte, California, which sits outside of Los Angeles. And it was founded in 1913. And it, interestingly enough, started as two tents. In the early 1900s, tuberculosis was ravaging the country. It was killing people at just this unprecedented rate. And a group of nuns and nurses were just so, and if you ever visit Duarte, I mean, it's a very populated area now, but if you look at a map and think about the early 1900s and where it was situated, it was basically where people were being sent, just very candidly and frankly, to die. But these nuns and nurses were just so disturbed by what was happening they erected 2 tents to start caring for the patients. One tent was for the sick, the other tent was for the caregivers, the workers that were there. And while there, they started to really treat and care for and love the patients. They started to help establish hope, establish healing. Hence this term, as it grew and became something that started to get national attention, the City of Hope. And as tuberculosis started to get under control, they started to shift their focus to diabetes and cancer. And as research and drug development and so forth started to ensue and bloom and blossom, they garnered more attention and started generating funds. And they were able to raise money to build a research lab, and then build a hospital, and build a clinic. And now it's probably the premier cancer treating organization in the country. A lot of drugs that are used to treat cancer patients all over the world have their origin in Duarte at City of Hope. Anybody know anyone inflicted with diabetes?
There's probably some in the room.
Anybody know the top medication used to treat diabetes? Who said insulin? Give her a cup in the Mercer. In the Mercer. You're absolutely right. Synthetic insulin was developed and established on City of Hope's campus. We own the patent for that. So it's that level of an organization. Not only are we treating, but they also gained a lot of their notoriety from their research in blood cancers. So we do more bone marrow transplants than any other patient, any other country, any other hospital in the country. I'm excited about that because I had the privilege when I lived in California of donating bone marrow to a patient. So if you hadn't, please consider commercial for a separate organization. Be the Match. So Be the Match is an organization where when I was in college like you probably have your campus center where vendors and people come to set up things on something don't do. They normally would have the credit card vendors. I took advantage of those, took some time to get away from that. But Be the Match was there, and there was a lady that looked amazing. I mean, it was probably the most beautiful woman I'd seen at the time in my life. She was registering people. So all the guys were in the line. So we registered, we got a free t-shirt. No attention from her, but we got a free t-shirt. Right. Fast forward, maybe 16 years later, I get a call. Actually, my mother gets a call. How they had her number, I don't know. And then my now wife gets a call and says, hey, Be the Match is looking for you. You've been listed as someone as a potential donor. I'm like, what, Be the Match? I was like, no, I did that for the t-shirt. I don't really want to give. But working in healthcare and talking to the people, it was just hard not to go forward. So I went forward, completed the rest of the testing, and it turned out that I was indeed a match. So I went from my facility at the time, I was running Kaiser Permanente, to Sutter in Oakland, California, and they extracted bone marrow from my hips to save a patient's life. So all that to say, City of Hope is one of the premier and superior organizations in bone marrow transplantation as well. So we have the distinct honor and privilege of knowing that we contribute to saving the lives of cancer patients all across the country. That's just a little bit about City of Hope's origin.
And I'll add to some just the advantages of being a single specialty type of facility. So in my particular role, I am tasked with making sure that our hospital runs as efficiently as possible. In short, I have to make sure that we can pay the bills. So I keep costs low, and we try to make sure that revenues come into where we need them to come in. But some of the advantages of a single specialty, especially when it deals with cancer, is unfortunately most of us have probably known someone with cancer, experienced cancer, something of that nature. So when you know someone that's dealing with this disease, you know that it can't really wait. You don't have much time to try to get them in for treatment. And a lot of our backgrounds is in some of the larger hospitals that see a lot of different types of diseases. Nothing wrong with those particular hospitals, but when that's all we do, we have the advantage of getting a patient in tomorrow. And I really mean that. If a prospective patient calls today, my task is to make sure that we have the resources, we have the necessary programs in place to where that patient can be seen again as early as 24 hours from now. So we really try to make sure that patients are taken care of quickly and effectively. Number two, like with anything, and I'll bring up another sports analogy, if you play only one sport, you practice that one sport and it's the only thing that you do, you eventually develop an expertise. It's why you have position drills, you have specific position coaches. You go over that one thing that you do and you do it often so you can create that expertise. That's how it is for us with cancer. It's the only thing that we focus on. So outside of some of the efficiencies that come with, that's what we do. I can get the patient in quickly. We've developed a specific expertise. So for certain cancers that maybe you won't find at a local community hospital, we have a specific specialty in certain cancers that you may not find in other places. So we've developed a specialty and an expertise around those as well. So just wanted to provide some of the advantages.
No, and I think that's important, and not that you all preferably never encounter each other on that side of the equation, but the reality of it is, given where, and statistically given the number of people in the room, we may. A lot of community hospitals and systems, and I've run those too, tout having an oncology program, and they have oncologists, but Trevor's point about those specialists, those people that are only doing this each and every day. If you get prostate cancer, you want to go to someone that specializes in that. Ideally, you don't want the physician that is looking at prostate cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, colorectal cancer, and has a cursory understanding of them all. You want somebody that literally does that and only that, that's up to date on the latest and greatest research, that's up to date on the latest and greatest drug development, that's going to treat your specific case and patient. And also has the resources within that system to send you to a surgeon or another individual that can help and collaborate on that case. So again, it's an amazing organization. It's an amazing opportunity to serve, and I couldn't be more proud of those seats I get to sit in and represent them.
Patrick, do you want to add?
No, I was just gonna close off Jonathan's point, and Trevor alluded to it too. I think above all else, everything that we just talked about too, what sets us apart is everything that we do is in the same building under one roof. That's a big differentiator for us.
Yeah.
You know, as Jonathan was talking about the specific specialists, not only that it's specific focus that they have, but all of these specific specialties are right next to each other. And a lot of larger health systems, and for a cancer patient, back to that speed to care, you know, you're diagnosed with cancer, I don't want this solved today or tomorrow, I want this fixed yesterday, and so speed matters. And having all of those providers and specialties in one building under one roof versus at times that maybe the fragmented care, you could have a surgeon in one building and then a couple miles up the road is your medical oncologist. As a patient who's sick and not feeling well, that could take a toll on you trying to just simply navigate and coordinate all of that. And so having all of that right in one building right next to each other allows for patients to logistically move through. That's where the efficiency comes from, but providers to have provider-to-provider conversation that helps speed up the patient's care, get them into treatment faster, makes a big difference.
I already know you're inspiring some of these into looking into this as a job. So when we move to that kind of thought process, you know, and Mercer does focus on healthcare. We have numerous things that can take electives outside, like a business student can take a class in health professions, things like that. If you don't know that, you can. But with that being said, what are those things that you would look for? One is, what would the jobs be that you're hiring that would be entry level coming out?
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, what would be those things you'd be looking for on that resume to make that person stand out to you? Is that fair, guys?
So from,
Great question.
Yeah, from my standpoint, I'm a huge advocate and promoter of individuals that are, from an entry-level standpoint, thinking about project management as a goal and that was my first job. I was within the health space. I focus and lean towards it because you get the brass, the broad, I should say, experience and depth of the healthcare space. You'll get to work on, at least I got to work with different people managing different projects. So I got to see the regulatory side of the space. I got to see compliance and legal. I got to see operations. I got to work with some of our physicians on different things. And it really allowed me to get a better and a bigger understanding of the organization as a whole. Because unless you truly just know, I want to work in compliance, this is what I want to do, healthcare is so broad. There's probably not a major or degree on this campus that wouldn't fit into the healthcare ecosystem in some way. I can't think of one. Communications, marketing, law, business, finance, economics, engineering, IT. Whatever you want to do, if you think about a hospital in and of itself, and a health system, I often say, are their own city. And if you visit our flagship main campus in Duarte, it's it. I mean, if you like construction, there's always some buildings being built. There are always civil engineers on the campus, architectural engineers, electrical engineers. And from my perspective, when I was sitting in your seat, I didn't know that. I thought everybody was primarily some form of science or a clinician, not thinking about, we spend at one point probably $100 million annually on marketing. So we have people that specialize in marketing that manage probably $100, $200 million budgets for it. So commercials you see, the digital advertising, and so forth. Business development. I know you say he has probably the least attractive job. Sometimes.
Oh, for me.
For you.
I'm an accountant.
Yeah,
Remember,
well-
I do have that introvert inside me.
Yeah, okay, I guess you
So I
got a
don't want
point.
to sell something to somebody.
Yeah.
There's people in this room that love his job.
Yeah, Pat plays golf, drinks wine, eats steak and lobster,
Yeah.
and just talk to people, and I pay for it.
Any questions?
So it's broad. Yeah, it's broad. You can do pretty much anything you want to do within that space and that system.
And just a couple of additional entry-level jobs. I think Jonathan hit the nail on the head. Project management's huge. One of my first roles in healthcare was an administrative fellowship, where I had an opportunity to report directly to a CEO and a chief strategy officer, and they give me high-level projects that they're doing at the executive level. So you get a full picture of what's going on there. But maybe to even answer the question on what are the types of things that we particularly look for, especially when we're hiring entry level. We typically know if it's an entry-level job, you're not going to come with this wealth of experience. So really, what I like to understand is what's your why? Why do you want to do this? How do you connect what you do every day to an overall purpose? And even though you all may not have a ton of work experience, there's ways that you can demonstrate, especially in a resume, how have you taken a certain process, whether that was in school, whether that was in a sport, whether that was in a job that you did while in school. You've taken something from point A to point Z. And how can you demonstrate the outcomes that you did from that? For example, and I'll be very simple. I worked at a chicken restaurant when I was in high school that I blew up. We won't talk about that particular piece, but
He literally set this place on fire. You can Google it. He blew the place up, guys.
that is true. That doesn't go on a resume. So that's not the way you put it. But one of the processes that I got from it before I blew up the building was they wanted to create a more efficient way to wash the dishes. So seems like a very simple task, but what I was able to do is I had some architects come in, look at how we were doing certain things, and we realized that we need an additional dishwasher. Very simple, but when you can demonstrate that, hey, I was able to do this work and reach a common goal and can demonstrate that with specific results, that's something that I'd be looking for. And in an interview, don't tell people that you blew up a restaurant. That's the last piece.
Hey, you guys are full of stories.
Oh yeah, you should be around us sometime. Just double down on one thing he said, and I know you all probably have questions too. I don't want us to leave with, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how you show up.
Yeah.
Trevor mentioned, and I agree with him, we know you're not going to show up with 5 years of experience and having managed a P&L of whatever certain dollar amount, but how you show up in the energy and enthusiasm, your why, can carry you and catapult you beyond belief. There's a gentleman right now that's working in our finance department that's a student at the University of West Georgia. I met him at a chamber breakfast. So the Chamber of it was a Chamber of Commerce breakfast that was hosted on their campus. He stood up and asked a question, and he articulated it in a manner that I turned around, like, who's this gentleman asking the question? I just knew it had to be an econ, somebody with just ages of experience and this and that. So I started to ask people about him. His name is Leland, and they were like, yeah, he's a first year graduate student, this and that, had a suit on. He came for the event. He came and he fit in. Found out he was a student. You asked Leland where he's working at now, City of Hope, Atlanta, while he's finishing up his degree. So it's those types of things that you want to make sure that you're mindful of too when you get in the room. And I know it may come across as though people don't wear business casual, the thing to go, I can wear jeans, I can wear this. In certain environments, you're 1000% can. But there are also some where you need to make sure you're presenting an image, because it's still very much, despite us coming past the pandemic and people working from home, I'll tell you this story real quick. We did have an executive that was working from home that forgot he didn't have on pants. He had his underwear on, stood up. Yeah, so don't do that either.
I'm sure it was recorded.
Right. And it was not me, so it's.
No, it was no one in this room. Yeah.
But we always say dress to impress.
Absolutely.
And and that is, hopefully they're really reiterating. So what is that one thing that you wish someone would have told you when you were sitting in these seats? Or anything on that kind of avenue? Because many of them don't know exactly what they want to do. And I mean, your guys' paths have been phenomenal, because I think it's really encouraging. I always say to our football players, I want plan B.
Oh, yeah.
You can have plan A, B football, what's plan B?
Yep.
And I think this has been phenomenal, but what is that one thing for them to kind of take away that you wish you would know?
Yeah, one, I think just acknowledging the point that it is okay to not know. As we've described, we all thought we were going to be potentially doing vastly different things, and so
Not me.
Well,
I wish you had one.
yeah, in some ways, but you never know where your opportunities are going to lie. So I think knowing that at the time, I think for me sitting in this seat and it kind of fast forward as you're getting closer to graduation, I wish I understood better that that failure is okay. At that point in time, at that stage in your life, you're thinking about, I've got to be perfect. I've got to get, the right job, the right career. Everything's got to line up. I can't make any mistakes, or, I won't be employed there anymore. And so that creates a lot of unease and anxiety, which I learned, later on in life with some perspective that, some of those failures that you have were actually good growth and learning lessons. So failure is okay early on. And then I think at the time too, sitting in the seat, I wish someone told me to maybe not compare myself to others at that moment in time. And so, along the lines of failure, when you're thinking about all that stuff, you could start seeing other people with, he or she got this job, or he or she's getting paid this, or, they moved out of their parents' basement and they got a house, and you start seeing all of those things and kind of all the noise that's happening around you, and then you lose sight of what you really want and what you really want to do. So I think those are the two things for me that I wish I had a better understanding of, and knew that some of that stuff was okay early on in life.
Yeah, and mine, I would say something very similar to Pat. I think what I was so focused on, especially coming out of college, was how quickly can I get to my dream job. And life really is, I'm sure you've probably all heard this, it really is a marathon, not a sprint. When you become so focused on how do I get to my dream job earlier, how do I do this earlier, you then start to compare yourself to others that are maybe doing other things. And really for me, I wish I would have told myself that things will happen in my life at the right time for where I am in my life. And I didn't do that a lot earlier on, which is why I'm young and still have some hair that's starting to fall back. So I stressed myself out pretty early in life. So really just understand who you are, understand what you want to do, and realize things happen in your life when they're supposed to, as long as you prepare appropriately for it. And that would be the second piece. Always prepare. Continue learning. You're all in school now, and I'm not necessarily saying everyone has to go get a doctorate degree. That may not be your particular path. But what can you learn about yourself? What can you learn about your craft? And how can you continue working on that muscle in the same way you would if you're working out? But so I would say that life really is it's a marathon, not a sprint, and make sure you're continually learning.
I think, sorry, Jonathan, before you jump in, and this goes back to, I think, some of the skill set questions that we touched on earlier. The three of us talk about this all the time, just, that hard work and effort. I think being transparent with you all, Today I think sometimes we see, just because this is where society's at in some cases, is kind of that instant gratification, that Trevor was talking about. I get this job and now the expectation is I've done it for a little bit, I should get promoted, or I now deserve, this pay or this title, without the hard work and effort that comes along with that. And so nothing replaces that. The three of us didn't start out as a president, a vice president, a chief operating officer. I can't speak for all three of us, is that it took a lot of different jobs and a lot of hard work and effort, and consistently hard work and effort to get to where we're at. And for some, that can get lost on some people. So if nothing else, just that traditional kind of hard work and just put it in the effort type approach will get you a long way. So.
As you probably can tell, I always had my shit together, so. No. I'm joking. The one thing I would say and encourage you all to do, and this isn't because we're sitting here, but your professors and the staff here are doing something that I wish I'd had more of, and that when I did have it, I'd taken advantage of. And that's bringing in people that are walking in the shoes and sitting in the seats that you aspire to sit in. Take advantage of that. If you encounter someone that is, again, where you hope to be, or not even necessarily where you hope to be, because you can learn something and they may have connections with someone else that could potentially be where you are, and they offer to establish a relationship, cultivate it. I didn't do that like I probably should have in many instances. One of the things I hate, and I hope you all don't do it here, is when they create these, at some conferences and things, they'll tell students they have these business card competitions. So students walk around grabbing business cards, and before you know it, you got this many cards, but this many connections. Don't worry about the cards, get the connections. And that, what I would encourage, if you can forge and form connections with people, that breeds any of these cards, because you'll get back, I don't even remember what this guy looks like, and now you're on LinkedIn trying to figure it, versus sitting down having a real 5 to 15 minute conversation with someone that when they leaves is going to remember you, is going to want to pour more into you. That happened to me early in my career. I had the privilege of meeting a gentleman. He's still my mentor today. His name was Corwin Harper. I see you with the bow tie. I used to wear bow ties, and I was at a conference, and he noticed my tie. He stopped me in the hallway. He's said, "Man, I like your tie." So we just started talking. He was the CEO and area manager for Kaiser Permanente in Northern California. We talked. He said, "Man, you're bright. You got a bright future ahead of you. I'm gonna mentor you." And it would have been easy for me to either forget, or because I got this many cards, I got back, and true to his word, we established a relationship. And once a month, despite the 2-hour time difference, despite his many travels, he found time to hop on the phone to check in with me. The other thing, if somebody agrees to do that, have an agenda, have a purpose, use their time, have real questions, have some, and if you don't, things are going well, nothing really to touch on now, but I'll send you a note or whatever. And we did that. Fast forward, maybe 3 years after that, who ends up being the chief operating officer in Kaiser Permanente? In that same area he was leading, me. Who ends up being the CEO? Him. We end up with a relationship, and the other thing I would say to that is, because of those types of that intentional approach, I can honestly say I have not physically gone out and applied for a job in almost 20 years. And I've had probably 4 or 5 different ones. And it's been because somebody's called me, or somebody has said they're looking for someone. Hey, you should check out Jonathan. I think it may be a good role for him. Is how those things happen. So relationships. I wish I'd known that when I was sitting, because you all are in a space where it's so easy to forge relationships now. With the internet, with email, with FaceTime, with Zoom, Skype. There's so many things you can use.
I want to make sure we have time for their questions. I have more, so if you don't ask something, I'm going to keep going. But I want to give you guys a chance. Remember how he already said the person that asked the question really stood out? So pressure on.
It was a good question though, don't ask anything. No.
What are some questions? Someone got one in here? Go.
So I know that he's
We do, yes. Our facility in Atlanta does not. We specialize in adults in Atlanta, but in our flagship facility, which is the size of Disneyland, I mean, it's a huge campus. And seriously, there's a hotel on it. We have a hotel as well, but all types of things. Yes, they do pediatric cancer there, and separate physicians, of course, naturally, because the makeup of adults and peds is different.
So you talked about like making connections with people, but how do you, I guess, what's your advice on making connections with people that you have nothing in common with? Like personally, I have no interest in anything to do with healthcare.
Right.
So like, if I saw you guys at a networking event, how would I go up to you, still introduce myself and kind of get to know you guys, but without having anything in common?
Yeah, so if I'm you and we'll reverse the roles. I'm the student, what's your interest? Marketing, and you're the marketing exec for Coca-Cola, and we're at an event. Hey, I'm Jonathan.
Gabby,
Hey, Gabby, what do you do?
the marketing.
Oh, cool. I saw the recent ad. And it's a genuine conversation. You don't necessarily talk about work. I mean, you may have no interest in it, but you may have read something, you may have seen something, you may know somebody that has cancer, or you may just think, I'm a nice person. I may think you're a nice person. Where are you from?
Peachtree City.
I live in Peachtree City. There you go. Where'd you live?
I'm not telling you that.
But no, I literally do live in Peachtree City. I live in Kedron Hills, right around. Yeah. Did you have a golf cart?
He does live in Kennedy.
Yeah.
Wait, that's where I used to live.
Exactly.
Your neighbors.
And, no, wait a minute, though.
That's how it's done.
But you did catch the, what was the marketing budget?
It's big.
It's about $180 million.
That's a pretty cool marketing job.
Yeah, 180 million is a very goal market.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
But yeah, so that's how it's done. I mean, I literally live in Peachtree City.
And have a golf cart.
And have a golf cart. Do you? My 6-year-old should be 6 tomorrow. Loves the golf cart. I mean, and that's how a conversation ensues. You exchange information, and the next time I hear of somebody looking for someone in marketing, if you're telling me you're interested, hey, met Gabby, graduated from Mercer, great background, super cool. Talk to her. You may find that she'd be a perfect fit for this opportunity.
I'd say, no, sorry. It's literally that easy at times. I think the difference is that most people just won't go through with introducing themselves or just asking a question.
Right.
Because they're afraid to. And I'll tell you too, just to double down on that, if you're going to introduce yourself and ask someone about what they do, more often than not, they like telling you about what they do. So they'll offer up some of that information, and then you can play off of or ask more questions about whatever they're telling you. But it's just having the courage to go up and just do it.
We're probably neighbors and
That's
didn't
right.
even know.
I don't think a better person could have asked that question just then, but I think what we can learn literally from this situation, and even if we don't think we have things in common with people, there's always things that we can find that maybe we're both interested in. And I think another point, Jonathan made this earlier, but healthcare is so broad that while you're in marketing, we have a marketing component here, and while you may not want to be in healthcare, different executives in different industries can tie you into other industries. So even networking with people that aren't in your industry doesn't mean that they can't help you get connected in others.
And the other thing I would just say to that is, don't make the assumption that you're in healthcare, there's no connection, because you see Bill Piedmont, you see billboards. Somebody in marketing has designed that. Grady, City of Hope, Emory, you see the commercials. Somebody in marketing has decided, even the time that the commercials come on, somebody's paid for that ad. The search engine optimization, when you type in, somebody has run the analytics and decided, this is the best time, this is the best way to promote. Legacy Cancer Treatment Centers of America, the former organization, was probably one of the best I'd seen at it. I mean, at one point, if you typed in Cancer Treatment Centers of America popped up on your Google bar. The commercials would literally air at 1 and 2 and 3 in the morning. Why? Because most times, if you've been diagnosed with cancer, it's on your mind. You can't sleep. And if you go look at an old commercial, and you're lying in bed at 2 in the morning, you're thinking, and it comes across the tone, the way it would connect with the person, and the one they call now, and you pick up the phone and you call and you get an actual person on the line. It's all marketing, it's all promotion, it's all, and there are people, hopefully, that will have the knowledge that you have, that will educate me on, Jonathan, you need to do this because of this.
I've got to add the piece, because I know in my position too, the network that we're always doing, and that Chambers, you're in every single industry.
Right.
They have contacts in every industry, every type of thing, and so just because someone works for an organization doesn't mean they have those connections. Yeah, the business development probably has some issues.
Right.
You know? No, see, he's more like me. You know?
He is.
He's not gonna go as many chamber events.
No. He tells me
He goes
that.
to a lot of them.
I do go
He
to
does.
But what's another question? Yes, and now I'll go to you.
Hey, how are y'all?
Hey.
You guys have talked about the different or like broad variety of people and individuals that you come across in hospital administration. And in terms of like cultural intelligence, how capable are you at recognizing and adapting to like different cultural norms that you're gonna experience within your like business and management community?
Yeah, so we have the benefit, because we work in such a diverse space, of being educated and frankly trained on that. So there are courses and classes that we take. And this started for me early in my career. The mentor, Dr. Jones, that I told you about, he took me to some Rotary Club meetings with him so I could understand how to navigate that space and that world. He then introduced me to a concept called Toastmasters, which is an education in the art of extemporaneous speaking. So all those are different things that kind of help shape mine. And then it's also really just about listening too. And by listening to people from different cultures and backgrounds, you get to learn so much as well.
Thank you.
Very welcome, Professor.
Mason?
So, what,
So, I'm sorry for cutting you off, Mason. One other thing, just for everybody. When you get ready to ask a question, just a tip. Tell, hey, I'm so-and-so, 30 engineering major. That way I know I can associate a name with the question and the person. Go ahead, Mason.
hey, I'm Mason, I graduated from Mercer with my undergrad in management and marketing, and now I'm a MBA student here. For someone who has never been interested in the healthcare system beforehand, but, you know, they wake up one day and they're like, okay, yeah, I want to do that. What advice would you give to them, considering they don't have the knowledge or the training or anything about that for them to get into that profession?
Yeah, I'd say number one, and this is a great forum to do that, introduce yourself to people that are currently in the field. You can always get connected with people. I'll make sure that we can exchange information after this. You can ask whatever questions that you have for me. So I'd say that's number one. Number two, after you've kind of figured out or reached out to people that are currently within the field, do your own research on different organizations. Look for different opportunities to go to their career fairs, their health fairs that they have, and really learn about different jobs and things that you can be a part of at those organizations. But I think the biggest thing that you can do is really introducing yourself to people that are currently in the field that can help create different networking opportunities for you to meet with others.
And if you do come across, someone in your network that is part of that field, don't be afraid to ask, or, can I come visit the hospital? Can I tour? I don't know if you'd find, I know for us for sure, but, a hospital or administrative team that would turn away, a student or a person that was interested in healthcare and wanted to learn more about it, and wanted to come to the facility to maybe interact with some of the employees to learn a little bit more about just what goes into creating the hospital. As we were talking about it earlier, what we do now, we have, from elementary school to high school to college kids to college graduates are coming on campus just for that fact alone to learn more about the healthcare industry and what goes into it. I think a lot of people associate healthcare, I've got to be either a nurse or a doctor, and that's it, and don't really have a good understanding of what goes all into running a hospital. But back to that, don't be afraid to ask those questions. Don't be afraid to see if you could kind of come on campus to start building your own research and better understanding of how it works, because more often than not, people are not going to say no. They'll actually welcome the idea and the opportunity to bring you to their facility.
Thank you.
name's Herman. I'm a marketing and economics double major. What's one thing when you see students like us graduate and go into the job force in like an entry-level position, what's one thing you see students struggle with initially?
Great question. I think two things. The first is adapting to, it's not school anymore. There's an expectation of independent work. So while you all may be totally different, I've seen some struggle with the assertiveness that's required, to kind of get out there and just independently identify problems, independently address a need, and you wait on an assignment. The same way we wait in school as students, we waited on our professors to give us the syllabus and tell us what's due. When you accept a job, I'm now paying you because of a skill you have. And it's my expectation that you assert that skill on a daily basis. You'll get the overarching goals and the expectations of the organization. Like from my standpoint, at the beginning of the year, we established what we call balanced scorecard goals for our pillars: people, that's employee engagement and employee turnover; service, our patient satisfaction scores; quality, which is a series of metrics on healthcare outcomes; finance, bottom line, net revenue and EBITDA; and then growth, how many new patients and treatments will we provide. Within each of those, I have leaders that I cascade those goals down to. They know within their department what they should be doing to affect the overarching whole goal. As they cascade those down to you, you need to identify, okay, if you're a marketing major and you happen to be a project manager or an entry-level ad exec in marketing, your whole goal and objective needs to be, okay, I know my budget is $20 million here. It's my understanding that we're trying to drive 500 new patients in. I need to help identify where is there a market penetration opportunity for us, and you targeting that and you acting on and you engaging that. Waiting on an assignment is probably one of the biggest mistakes I think people make. And then the second, again, is just not understanding the rigor that is associated with like a job now, a career now.
Yeah, and maybe to add something to that, it's sometimes I see early careers struggling with how they connect what they do every day to a particular result. Not all activities are going to lead to a result, and sometimes when you're seeking out what you need to do, you have to be able to cut off, this activity isn't producing the desired result, so I need to find a different activity to do that can. Many people will stick to that same activity, hoping that it eventually leads to results, and it doesn't. So being able to quickly identify things that don't work, just as quickly as you can identify things that can, is something that can help you be successful.
Great question.
Hi, my name is Andres Barroquin and I teach economics. I wonder what kind of skills or what kind of activities an economics student can do in an organization like yours.
I have no idea. No. Go ahead.
Yeah, so economics, I didn't realize how key economics was to healthcare until I got into it. And we rely on economists often. Luckily, we have our chief financial officer knows economics well, so we lean on him often. But really a big thing that I believe is key to healthcare organizations as it relates to economics is how we can forecast and budget for the organization. So every year we have a budget cycle where we come together and we try to forecast and budget for how are we going to perform in the next year. So where economics comes in is we need to understand what are those social dynamics that may impact it, what are the economic factors, what are the political factors that we need to understand in order to put this budget together. For example, a little over 10 years ago now, the Affordable Care Act went into place. And where a lot of organizations went wrong is they didn't budget for what the true impact of that was. And you started to see a lot of hospitals closing their doors because they couldn't meet the financial goals and obligations that organization had. And I think it's because some organizations didn't rely on economics in that fashion, or two, they didn't have the skill set to really forecast and budget appropriately. So I would say some of those things is really understand how to forecast appropriately, take courses specifically on how to project your organization for the future. And also, it's not necessarily just dollars and cents. It's also understanding how political factors influence the economics of an organization.
That aligned or combined with what's happening in the market. So as an economist, you probably know or can help us determine what areas, what zip codes are slated for growth? Where is investment going? Those are places I may want to build an ambulatory surgery center. You can tell me whether or not the population is an aging one, and I know I need to think about geriatrics, or whether or not it's an up-and-coming one, and I need to think about pediatrics, or a mother-baby unit, because babies are going to be born. Like, all those are things that we would rely on to kind of help, and whether it be employment or consulting. As we were driving here, Pat showed me a proposal for an organization that he met with yesterday that wants to help us with some analytics and some economics around where potential market share could be for us. They want $380,000 for it, so
We have students that can help you do that.
for free?
For free, and we have a leader.
Awesome, I'm all about the free labor.
I told them to bring it up.
That was a pitch.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, he does do this stuff.
Right.
But
Well, I can even provide maybe a real-time example. We look at unemployment rates of particular zip codes often. There's certain places or certain positions that we need to hire pretty quickly. So we'll look into places or zip code where unemployment rates are a little higher. So we'll do a job fair in that particular area because we know that there's more people in that zip code that are looking for a employment that came from an economist. So that was insights that we were able to be given from that team, and we were able to hire several people based on that analysis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know that we're past your guys' class time, but I wanted to make sure they're going to stay here for a little bit, because I mean, your next class doesn't start for a few minutes, so I want you guys to be able to have that opportunity to network. But I do want you guys to realize with this panel, you know, I was being kidding at the beginning of kind of saying which job I would want, but I will tell you when you're in the roles where I started, I'm more like him. Most of you guys are not like us. We have that path, you know, and you've got to see those other paths. You don't need to know it, but you got to start somewhere. And each of these jobs and the people that work for them, each have different skill sets. But the only way you're going to find out where you're going to benefit is to start somewhere, and you're going to find out, you know, I started in business development. If you love going out there and whining and dining, that's just not my thing. You guys will think it is because I'm an external person, but that isn't. But I still do it, by the way. You still have to have the skill sets. Every one of them does it. But what I get is, if you didn't get anything out of here, is the broad base of what each of them has and the employees under them. You're going to gain some experience, but you got to start somewhere. And so I just appreciate you guys. I know I've seen several of the faculty. I saw Ashley Herman, which you guys need to know. She's your next best friend. They're nodding, going, thank you, having another voice saying this. So I just appreciate each of you with your time. And I do welcome you guys to stay and talk to them. Please do that. And yes.
No, I just want to say one more thing. No, again, thank you all. For those of you who may have to run, thanks so much for having us and for inviting us. The one thing, too, that I want to say that I didn't get to share, I'm a huge proponent of us telling our authentic, our real story. Because if you read our bios and if you read our resumes, it'll look like everything just worked together and everything. I was told no. I didn't get every job I wanted. I didn't do well on like standardized tests. So I went to school. When I went to college, I had to take remedial math before I could qualify to like start taking my real courses. I say that to say not to brag on taking remedial math. I don't think they knew that, so I may hear about this later. But I just didn't do well enough on the ACT, and it didn't deter me. I guess that's what I don't want you to think that you have to have a 4.0 or you have to graduate with this in order to sit where we sit. I work with some idiots sometimes, you know. I don't mean idiots, but not everybody was a Rhodes Scholar, an academic scholar. So I say that to say you're in a perfect position to learn. You're in a perfect position to prepare yourself. So yeah, I just wanted to be honest and transparent there.
Any closing note for you guys?
I mean, I'll just add to that again with an authentic story. I applied to grad school 3 times and didn't get in. So it took the 4th time. I got fired from my first job outside of college because I was told you're not connecting what you do to the results. So all of us here, we hear no's. We hear a lot of things that maybe you wouldn't see again to his point on a biography. But the thing is, again, you got to keep going. You got to keep pressing. And I come back to that continuous learning. I didn't get fired from my first job and say, okay, I'm done, I don't have anything else to learn. I took that opportunity to say, what did I do wrong? How can I connect that gap? And then what can I do to become better because of it? And I focused on that my entire career.
Even as an executive, and I gotta tell you this one, I was presenting early on in my career to our board. I got one of my first CEO jobs, and I thought I had it together. I was presenting a presentation. Midway through the not even midway, I think I got to maybe slide 3, and the board member stops me and says, called me little fella. Little fella? Were you drinking when you put this together? No, sir, I was not. And you got to continue going. And, so you just got to be prepared to get, what did Mike Tyson say? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. I got punched, but I had to continue. And then, so just know if you read and see our LinkedIn, see our bio, that there's a story behind it that probably mirrors a lot of yours. Thank you all.
Thank you guys.
If your QR code to check in on the screen didn't work, or you come see me, you can check in on paper.
Okay, but please come on up here.
If you didn't get a notebook and you would like one, come and